Hello and welcome to This Week in Agriculture, a presentation of the Communications Unit, Ministry of Agriculture. I'm your producer and host, Christopher Holder. On this week's presentation, we bring you highlights of Agriculture Minister Zulfikar Mustafa's activities for week ending August 31. And of course, he has been crisscrossing the country. He went all the way to Region 9. Day of Sports there, engaging with young people. He accompanied the president. He engaged with ambassadors and heads of companies in Kuwait, all with a view to advancing the interest of agriculture in Guyana. I'd like to extend the best wishes to our Amerindian brothers and sisters celebrating Amerindian Heritage Month. This is, of course, September 2, and Agriculture Minister Zulfikar Mustafa will be visiting agricultural communities across the country in Amerindian communities with a view to engaging with them to help with any issues they may be having, and of course to take the message of what's happening in agriculture, the vision of the government in terms of advancing agricultural infrastructure in all of its forms all across the country. This program is produced for television by Matrix Video Productions and Advertising based in East Berbice. We will be back after these messages.
The 25 by 2025 initiative is not just about numbers, it's about innovation and sustainability in Caribbean agriculture. In 2023, we launched a New Zealand-funded greenhouse project for women and youth and a US aid-funded agricultural productivity improvement activity worth $5 million. These projects are empowering our communities and driving technological advancements in farming. Join us in supporting these initiatives. Together, we're building a resilient and prosperous future for the Caribbean. This message is brought to you by the Government of Guyana in association with their CARICOM Secretariat. Learn more at our website.
Calling all farmers. Your registration with the Ministry of Agriculture promotes inclusivity and equity in our agricultural sector. By registering, you ensure that marginalized groups have equal access to resources and support, empowering everyone to thrive in farming. Together, let's build a more inclusive and prosperous future for agriculture. Register today and join us in shaping the future of farming for all. Contact the Ministry of Agriculture Extension Officer in your area and become a registered farmer and be part of the agriculture revolution. A message from the Ministry of Agriculture.
In August of 2020, the PPPC government took office with a promise to transform Guyana. Today, we are delivering on that promise. With a historic investment of $33.5 billion in drainage and irrigation, we've strengthened our nation's agricultural backbone. Over $31.9 billion was dedicated to the National Drainage and Irrigation Authority, ensuring that our lands are protected and productive. The Mahika-Maikoni Abari Agricultural Development Authority received $657 million, while the Flood Risk Project was allocated $1 billion. 7 new pump stations have been constructed, with 11 more on the way and 2 at the procurement stage, safeguarding our farms and communities. We've paved the way for prosperity for our farmers, building over 97 kilometers of farm-to-market roads with a $1 billion investment. These roads are more than just infrastructure. They are pathways to a brighter future. To bolster capacity, the NDIA has procured 108 pieces of heavy-duty equipment, while the MMA has added 7 more to its fleet. These powerful machines, valued at billions, are revolutionizing our drainage and irrigation systems, ensuring our farmlands thrive. Under previous administrations, farmers faced uncertainty as their land leases were revoked, but the PPPC government stands with our farmers. In 2022, we distributed 128 leases, followed by another 100 in 2023. This year, we've already distributed 30 leases, with more to come. In Region 5, we've invested in drainage and irrigation works, benefiting 30,000 acres of agricultural land. In Upper and Lower Pomeroon, 1.8 billion has been spent to provide irrigation for over 500 farmers and 20,000 acres of farmland. Even in the remote regions, we are making a difference. A $62.1 million rainwater harvesting project in Deep South Rupununi is benefiting over 800 farmers across 20 villages, ensuring sustainable farming for generations to come. From the coastal plains to the interior villages, the PPPC government is working tirelessly to build a stronger, more prosperous Guyana. Together, we are paving the way to a brighter future. A message from the government of Guyana through the Ministry of Agriculture. We begin this week's review of Agriculture Minister Zulfikar Mustafa's engagements this past week by telling you about two key visits he received from representatives of important international development partners in the persons of non-resident ambassadors to Zambia, His Excellency Glein Michelo, and from Zimbabwe, His Excellency Paul Shiakawa. During the meetings, the officials discussed areas of mutual interest in the agriculture sector, as well as possible collaborations and areas for investment. Minister Mustafa also met with a high-level delegation led by Kuwait's Faoud Al-Gamin and Sons group of companies to discuss the successes and possible establishment of another large-scale commercial hydroponic farm in Guyana. The Ministry of Agriculture, through the Regional Agriculture Department of Region 9, handed over much-needed agricultural items to Tushao of Massa Canary, Joseph Aya, this past week. The items included fertilizer, coconut and citrus plants, nitrogen powder, and a cushy ant's bait, bamboo water pumps, a complete beehive set, wire and farming tools, all aimed at supporting agriculture development in the remote village. Two traveled to Massa Canary village in Deep South Rupununi, one of the most remote communities in Region 9, involves 4 days' journey via land and river from Lethem or by air. On Saturday, Agriculture Minister Zulfikar Mustafa and team from the Ministry of Agriculture traveled to West Berbice for a meeting with farmers and residents from Region 5, where he engaged them on matters of interest to them, but also briefed them on the massive development strides being made in agriculture, as well as its contribution to the half-year economic growth, as reported by Minister with Responsibility for Finance, Dr. Ashni Singh. In reflecting on the performance of the non-oil sector for the first half of the year, Minister Mustafa said it is clear that agriculture's contribution to that performance for the first half of this year justifies the government's investment in the sector over the last 4 years.
And because of what we have been doing over the last 4 years, when you look at the non-oil sector, it grew by 12-point-something%, over 12%. And that shows because if you look around the world, taking out oil and gas alone, the economy will grow by 12%. And that's a tremendous achievement because when you look around the world, economies are contracting. When you look at the sector, the non-oil sector, you look at the construction sector, look at the mining sector, look at the agriculture sector. Agriculture contributed 28% of non-oil GDP to our country. Because it's tremendous growth in this sector. And it has to be that we are doing something good to get these growth, because the rice sector grew by 18% this year, this first half of the year. 18%, we produced 362,000 tons of rice for the first half. When you look from 2022 coming back, we have produced 610,000, 653,000, and this year is 710,000 tons of rice, the target. We are very optimistic that at the end of this crop, by the end of this year, we will surpass the target that was set in this year's budget of 710,000 tons. You look at the fishing sector, it grew by 27% for the first half of the year. And that came against the background where the naysayers were saying issues in the fishing industry. When you look at the investment that we have made in almost all the landing sites in this country, we have tried to build it to a level, bring it up to a level where the fisher folks at least can enjoy basic facilities. We build sheds, we put lights, we put in washroom. For the first time in the history of this country, all those facilities we are building in at these landing sites. When you look at the crop sector, you're seeing robust growth in the crop sector, fruits and vegetables. The sugar sector would have contracted because last year we produced 60,000 tons of sugar. But I am very optimistic at the end of this year, at the end of this crop, sugar will surpass last year's target too. I am very, very optimistic about that. And that shows our allocation, the budgetary allocation.
The Agriculture Minister noted that one of the key investments that government continues to make is directly to the farmers and farmers groups across the country.
And these inputs that we are making available to farming groups, we have about roughly about 10 groups this afternoon will be receiving various implements. We are making these available so that the people can increase production. We want Guyana to be a food hub. We are now building one on the east bank, the highway, Yarukabra. We are building a food hub. But for that hub to be successful, you, the farmers, will have to ramp up production in various areas. We want the crop sectors to develop. We want to produce more what we are doing. We want to increase production in all the areas. So that is why when we look at the crop sector, we want all the traditional crops. We want you to increase production. We are now building a tissue culture lab at Nari, because when you look at the number of nurseries that we have, it's about 11 nurseries across the country. We cannot satisfy the demands that farmer has in terms of getting planting material. So now we are building a tissue culture lab at Nari that will produce millions of planting material, disease resistance, and we will make planting material as what we are doing now, free of cost to the farmers, all the planting material. We are now going to new areas. We have started the corn and soya, y'all know about that. We are importing $40 million in corn and soya annually. We are looking that by next year end, we must be self-sufficient in saving that money, so that money can go to other sectors. We have gone into aquaculture right here at Anvawak. We have the pilot project where we have 10 ponds, and we have the prawns production now started right here. By another week from now, by next week Friday, we'll have the first harvest from this area, Anvawak here, coming out of Anvawak. And this will be tremendous boost for us as a country. When you look in places like in Latin America, in the Central American area, places like Ecuador, Peru, and so their economy, they are having a large revenue coming out of the aquaculture sector. And that is why we want agriculture. When we talk about agriculture, we don't only mean rice and sugar. We want us to be a leader in all the areas.
Saturday's event also saw 10 farmers groups receiving agricultural inputs to advance their farming activities. The inputs included water pumps, tillers, farming tools, etc. Livestock farmers received black giant chickens and the Barbados blackbelly sheep. The groups that received the inputs were from Ithaca, Ansgrove, Fowles, Recess Novar in Maikoni, Zimurdin, Rosignol de Edward, One Guyana, and Blairmont Zorgenhoop. Livestock farmers from West Berbice were on hand to receive their black giant chickens and Barbados blackbelly sheep. During his presentation to farmers and residents at the MMA meeting Saturday, Minister Mustafa had referred to the prawns project at Onvawak, noting that the first batch of prawns are set to be harvested by the end of this week. We took our cameras over to the project for a look at what's on the ground, just over 3 months since the start of stocking in the pilot pond. When on the full production, the 10 ponds will be stocked with 600,000 prawns each, with harvest expected every 4 months. The pilot pond, which is expected to be harvested later this week, was stocked with 60,000 prawns, and according to the experts on site overseeing the project, they are very satisfied at the results so far. We had a look at the prawns expected to be harvested this week. As you can see, not bad at all. A second pond has already been stocked with 360,000 prawns, with harvest expected in 3 months. While in Region 5 Saturday, Agriculture Minister Zulfikar Mustafa handed over a brand new house to a grandmother who lost her home to fire earlier this year. The house was constructed through the Men on a Mission initiative, MOM, with funding coming from the private sector, the Junior Muhammad family.
So we are here this afternoon to hand over this house to our sister here, Auntie Daphne. This here is another commitment from His Excellency the President. You know, he started the program, the Men on Mission. And this is another program that we are seeing here this afternoon, that a new house will be handed over to Sister Daphne. And this here was made compliment by the Mohammed's family. I want to compliment them. I want to thank them because of corporate sponsor. These programs are necessary. You know, the government, as a government, we are ensuring that Guyanese being provided with housing. To date, since we got back into government, over 35,000 persons would have received their house lots, and we are seeing a robust program in the housing sector. This here is another program, another brainchild of His Excellency the President, where he conceptualized this whole program with the view of helping vulnerable people in the population. This afternoon was a testament of the commitment of His Excellency and further the Mohammed's family in making this gesture here available. I understand the investment was approximately $6 million. On behalf of His Excellency the President, I want to compliment them, and I hope, Auntie, this will make a difference in your life. You'll have a more comfortable accommodation, and your house was burned down, unfortunately, but here again, because of the commitment of our President, the carefulness of our President, the care and concern of our President, you now is getting a new house from the Mohammed's family, from the President program. So I want to thank you all very much, and I hope that other sponsors can come on board so that we can make these facilities available to the vulnerable population.
Ameen, alhamdulillah.
All right.
This is This Week in Agriculture, a presentation of the Communications Unit, Ministry of Agriculture. We now bring you a feature, a training video produced by the National Agricultural Research and Extension Institute, NARI, on the management of the cassava caterpillar. Now, this is a very hardy pest. It can demolish an entire crop in 24 hours, and if you don't manage it in time, you could suffer severe losses. So that's coming up on This Week in Agriculture.
Welcome to our exploration of Arenis elo, commonly known as the Elo Sphinx, moth or caterpillar. While fascinatingly beautiful to look at, Arenis elo can be a major pest in agriculture. Arenis elo belongs to the family Sphingidae. Did you know that Arenis elo caterpillars exhibit fascinating mimicry and camouflage? Their varied appearances help them blend into their surroundings, making it harder for predators to spot them. Additionally, their rapid growth and ability to change appearances are truly remarkable.
What we have here is a typical issue of caterpillar outbreak. This caterpillar is known as the cassava caterpillar. Usually, when you have caterpillar outbreak, in particular in cassava, they come in large numbers, by the millions. And if there's a large extent of cassava cultivation, they tend to attack the majority of the plants on that estate. Here we encounter at Craig, Hope, and Fellowship on these banks, we have a large area here cultivated with cassava. And the caterpillar outbreak would have caused significant damage to many of these plants. If you notice, the caterpillar feeds on the leaves, and in even some cases, it feeds on the young shoot or any other soft part of the plant. By defoliating the plant wouldn't be able to realize photosynthesis. In the absence of photosynthesis, the cassava tubers would not be able to develop. Therefore, the plant would deem not good for production purposes.
Known for their streamlined bodies and swift flight, their abdomen has very distinct gray and black bands. The upper side of the female forewing is pale gray with a few dark dots near the outer margin. The upper side of the male forewing is dark gray and brown with a black band running from the base to the tip. In both sexes, the hind wing upper side is orange with a wide black border, a wingspan ranging from 75 to 95 millimeters. These moths are a sight to behold in the night sky. The moths develop through 4 life stages: eggs, larvae, pupa, and adult. The life cycle begins with the female moth laying eggs on the leaves of the cassava plant. Once hatched, the larvae or caterpillars start their voracious feeding. The larval stage lasts about 2 to 3 weeks depending on temperature, environmental conditions, and availability of food. When matured, most larvae drop or walk down the plant to pupate on or in soil. From egg to adult, the entire development cycle typically takes approximately 4 to 6 weeks under tropical conditions. Arenis elo is found across a wide range from the southern United States through Central America and deep into South America. They thrive in various habitats including forests and agricultural areas, especially those areas that practice monoculture plantations. The larvae feed on several plants, particularly cassava, earning them the nickname cassava caterpillar. They are also known to feed on papaya and other members of Euphorbiaceae family. Heavy infestations can lead to significant crop loss, particularly in cassava and papaya fields. Various management strategies can be employed.
What we will have to do in this case, we'll have to monitor. Monitoring is very important. If you come and you check on your plot and you notice, if you don't have good eye and you didn't notice the eggs, but from the time you start seeing leaves that are being defoliated, it is important that you immediately use a contact insecticide. Because caterpillars are soft body, most contact insecticide will kill them. You use a contact insecticide at the rate recommended by the manufacturer, and with a mist blower, you can be able to control them. Many times the outbreak don't start on the entire plot, it might start in specific areas, and you can just treat them in that specific area, but you keep monitoring the other parts of the plot. Furthermore, after you finish treating, you need to continuously monitor. If you look and see any loose part of the soil, you can uproot those areas. And if you notice a brownish to about 1.5 to about 2 inches long organism, probably the size of your small finger or a bit smaller, that is the pooper for the insect. That pooper would lend to another generation of the pest. Therefore, you need to be very much aware of what is happening and continuously monitor so that you can treat as soon as the pest outbreak comes again. So as we continue to think about management, as I mentioned, the pooper may be in the soil. It's important to understand when that pooper is in that stage in that soil, there is nothing you can do about it. It isn't feeding and it's in a hard protected shell. Therefore, any chemical you apply would just be a waste of time and money. I therefore advise you that the only thing you can do at that stage is to physically remove that pooper. But then for you to find all those pooper, you would need to go and check all the soils all around. You might be disturbing the plant root. So it is not advisable to try to manage the pest at that stage. The best stage to manage is in the larval stage. That is when the insect feeds. The body does not have the kind of protection that protects it from the chemicals. It's a soft body insect, and therefore any contact insecticide would kill it. Furthermore, I advise farmers not to just go and spray the plants if you don't see the insect. This insect appears seasonal, and it doesn't appear every season. At the start of the rain season you can find it, but sometimes it doesn't appear in 10 years. So there is no point in just spraying to think that you're going to protect the plant. You only spray if you see the insect. What is more important is monitoring, because your monitoring program that you have, and I advise you, your monitoring should be done at least every other day. Your monitoring program that you have is what will tell you if you need to use any chemicals or not. It's important that when monitoring for the caterpillar, if you notice the caterpillars today, it's important to treat today. These caterpillars are voracious feeders, and in 24 hours, they can wipe out an entire acre of cassava cultivation. Like I mentioned before, most contact insecticides can work to manage this caterpillar. I would advise that you use, we have a number of them available locally, and off the top of my head I can call things like Fastac, Tengard, among many others. But the important thing is, as soon as you identify the pest, to treat it. The thing about cassava caterpillar is that if it's in an area where there are other cassava farmers and you observe it in your plot, you can be assured that the caterpillar would affect the other farmers. What you do? Immediately, you should inform your local extension officer and the other farmers in the area. Simply because if you wait, within a day or two, everybody can lose their crop. By informing the local extension officer, that officer would be able to, if possible, render any assistance. Furthermore, that officer would be able to reach the other farmers as well to properly advise them on how to manage the pests in an expeditious manner.
Important takeaways in the management of the cassava caterpillar is to monitor your crop for the presence of the pest. Once its presence is detected, spray the appropriate insecticide at the recommended rate immediately. Report your findings to the nearest extension officer in your area so that other cassava farmers could be informed and take the necessary steps. Remember that the pest is only vulnerable during its feeding stage and cannot be affected by chemicals during its pupal stage.
Remember, time is of the essence.
For more information on the management of the caterpillar in cassava cultivation, contact the nearest extension officer in your area.
Well, that's all the time we have on this week's edition of This Week in Agriculture, a presentation of the Communications Unit, Ministry of Agriculture. I'm your producer and host, Christopher Holder. Until next time then, be good to yourselves and to each other.